A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of Food for Thought with Professor Ndete. Last week, we kicked off a conversation talking about paranoia, understanding what it is and how it manifests itself. But we didn't quite get to finish that conversation. So on today's episode, we pick up from where we left off last week, because when we understand these things, we reduce the stigma associated with mental health issues. Let's get back to the conversation. I'm just wondering, I remember at one point my late father-in-law, got into this space where he was saying there are people after him.
Yes.
And even he got to a time where he was not comfortable eating in his own house.
Yes.
Because he would say there are people here trying to poison me.
Absolutely.
And we kept wondering, what is it? Sisi tumekula hiyo chakula.
Yes.
Na tuko sawa.
Yes.
Him, he just refused. And he always kept saying it. And it got to a place he was really getting mad at us because you guys are looking at me and thinking I'm crazy. I'm not crazy.
Yes.
I know exactly what I'm telling you. This is what's happening.
Yes.
So was that paranoia?
Yeah, well, it could have been that he was having hallucinations, and I will explain.
Okay.
Hallucination is what you see, or what you smell,
Yes.
what you taste, what you hear,
Yeah.
and what you touch. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So if a person is having hallucinations, say, of taste, like the food changes the taste. Okay. So here, if we had developed that paranoia, it was as a result of ongoing mental state.
Okay.
If he was smelling things and he felt that the food was smelling funny,
Yes.
and this again can occur because of a mental condition, a physical mental condition, or if he's hearing things, or is seeing things, illusions,
Yes.
then he develops a way of reacting to that kind of situation. Or if he has touch hallucinations, he's reacting to these touch hallucinations and he is trying to explain who could possibly be doing that. And if they really feel the food is tasting bad, or they smell, or the food smells, then they will not eat that food. And they will say, I can't eat this food because I think the food is poisoned.
Yes.
Because it's tasting unusual, it's smelling unusual. That could have been a possible explanation. It could have been, as I say, it could be because of schizophrenia or depression or another ongoing condition in the mind. That would be very different from where the paranoia comes from. Nowhere you cannot understand it in terms of ongoing medical condition or psychiatric condition. So that is a possibility. There's a case, and we see a lot of it here, by the way.
Oh.
There's a case where another woman, 60 years, was living in UK. I knew about this because she was brought to our consulting room where I was training. And our problem was that she was having what we call sensory hallucination. Sometimes we call them somatic hallucinations.
Okay.
And she felt that every day, every night she went to sleep, people came and attacked her sexually.
Ooh.
And our only belief was that, or what she thought it must be people from the neighbors.
Yes.
So she started behaving in an unusual way, and she started moving. Every time she went to bed, she moved furniture, like you people moved furniture in my office, and they put it against the
door.
Against the door. So these people would still come, and she just couldn't understand where they were coming from. So she blocked the chimney. From the floor, and so that she thought they might come through the chimney.
Yes.
And then this didn't work, so she went to the top of the chimney. She blocked the chimney. These people still came. She put bars against the door, against the windows. These people still came, and no, she started. The neighbors saw something was happening, but then they said nothing of our business. Yeah. So eventually, in desperation, she went to the top of the house and started screaming at the neighbors and throwing things at them.
Oh my goodness.
Children of yours, the way you told them they do this to me, why should they do that to any other woman like me? A window. That's when they called the police. And then she was seen by a doctor. She was brought to a clinic and she was put on very simple medicine and she improved. We see these cases here. They present in slightly different way. Like one old lady we saw here, and our condition was similar, being assaulted by grandchildren. So she moved from one house to another, and then every time she went there, she would move now to live with her grandchildren. She would just move away within a very short time. And those things are very embarrassing. So she didn't tell anybody.
Yes.
So eventually, she was taken to see a doctor because the relatives, the children, both the daughters and the sons could not understand why their mother kept on moving from one house to another after a very short time, and she would just move. She would just move and say, "Terrible people! I brought you how properly. Look at these children of yours, the way they are behaving," and she would not reveal what it was. So eventually we talked, and in very strict confidence alone, I asked her, is it possible that this thing is happening? She said, "Yes, doctor, how did you know about this?" Wow. And then she opened up. These children, they have been doing these things to me, and there's no way I can tell my children, my daughters and sons, and this has been going for a long time. I really have no idea why they are doing these things to me. And of course, we understood, and she told me never to tell anybody. We put her on treatment, and I never told the relatives because I do respect them in the children, the confidentiality. And she improved, and the things got better, and things like that. So very common. It can occur in that kind of situation. That situation is very different from the Daniel McNaughton story.
Yes.
Because here she was reacting to a problem in the brain. And when they get to that age, 80 and 90, particularly in women, there are some organic changes in the brain, and they may precipitate those kind of mental situation. In fact, we call it age-related hallucinosis, which is very common. Another thing is when we are talking about the mind, people, when they have a primary problem in the mind, a good example would be what we call alcoholic hallucinosis. When people have been drinking heavily and they stopped drinking, and the levels of alcohol start going down, they may start hearing very threatening voices, abusing them, want to kill them, and the people want to kill them. And it's so threatening that they will attack whoever they think is the cause of this. They will try to escape. They might even jump through this window. They jump. They will do anything. And if they have a gun, they will shoot their way out.
Wow.
Because they are hearing these voices is so real to them. You cannot tell that and the worst thing you can tell them is that they are pretending. They are not pretending because so real. The voices are like you are hearing mine. Again, a problem of the mind caused by drinking, especially if the levels of alcohol in the brain are falling. So I hope I've been able to demonstrate that it's a long continuum from what you may call normal to a paranoia that is occurring as a result of another disease of the mind. And they are trying to explain what is happening, their own interpretation of what is happening, to what we call delusions, when there is no other cause except that is a primary delusion. It is paranoia as a diagnosis on its
On its
own standing.
Mm.
The managements are different.
You
Yeah.
mentioned alcohol, and you reminded me of something, and I'm just wondering if also excessive use of drugs
Yes.
can trigger this kind of thing. Because I remember when we were in high school, there's a friend of mine who was taking bangi. You know, and one time he came and he shared and he said, me from today, I've stopped taking bangi. And I was asking him, okay, what happened? And he said, I took bangi over the weekend and we were just seated somewhere and suddenly I saw a train. And the train was coming to hit me. And I'm thinking, a train, you live in Isli. There's no railway track in Isli.
Yes.
Yeah, you live near the former Kenya bus garage.
Yes.
And he said he saw a train coming from the garage
Yes.
at full speed and the train was out to kill him.
Yes.
And he said from that day, he decided these things,
Yes.
I will not mess with them again. So I'm wondering, can drugs also
Of course,
trigger?
drugs will do that. Cannabis will do that. In fact, there's a kind of paranoia, which we call cannabis-induced paranoia. This may be controversial, but we see these cases.
Yes.
There is what we call mirror-induced psychosis, paranoia.
Wow.
We see it, every psychiatrist would see these conditions. They could be caused by other types of drugs that are used, because these drugs, in some people, they affect the state of the mind.
Yes.
And they start seeing things in a slightly different way. We call it illusion sometimes. And illusion is something like there's a cable here, and you see this cable, and you think it is a snake.
Oh.
Yeah. That is what an illusion is.
Yes.
And people may start wondering, who has brought this snake to my house?
Yes.
And of course, you attribute it to the people who are next to you. Yeah, because if I'm hearing a voice and it's so real to me, I look around, the person who is nearest to me should be the source of this.
Definitely.
So I either run away from him, or it's too provocative, I cannot let him get away with it, and I attack you. And I just, out of the blue, I attack you. And when you say, why are you doing this? Say, don't ask me why I'm doing this. Why have you been doing this to me? And then it becomes absolutely bizarre. Yeah.
I'm just wondering, is there a way to detect this condition before it escalates to such a degree?
Yes, it's possible to detect this, and the most, but you see, when it reaches a stage where people notice it, then and the people are sensitive to the fact that this person might be having paranoia, and they are aware. They have this kind of awareness. I mean, even like listening to what we are talking about.
Yes.
They may decide, well, I might be dealing with paranoia, let me look for help. But more often than not, the people who are around them do not understand what is going on. And they keep on complaining about this patient. There are no people here. You are pretending. There's nobody who is trying to harm you. It is just in your mind. And they find that very insulting and offensive. It's your mind. You tell them it is in their minds. It's not real. And for them, it's so real. So you tend to detect it by when the symptoms are already there. The so-called primary delusions, people may have them for a long time and they protect them very much in their minds. But if you are living with people in your family, if you see some of these things, don't take them for granted. Look for help.
Thank you so much for being a part of Food for Thought with Professor Ndete. We haven't quite finished this discussion on paranoia. We'll pick up on it again next week. Have yourselves a great weekend.